up to the part of my trip where there's no reception, nothing to listen to on the radio, nothing interesting. I would rather listen to Glenn Beck. I don't want to listen to some mindless nonsense on 77 a.m. or 7:10 a.m. I mean, in the afternoon they have some good shows there. You have Mark Levin, you have Rush Limbaugh, even Sean Hannity, when even Savage are better than these nonsense local people, just New York garbage that I really don't want to listen to. I don't want to listen to music. Anyway, it's Sphera. Alright, it's after like Boim or whatever, but I'm not a music person. I should listen to a shir, but I forgot to download one on the way. I should listen to shir the whole time, but half the time I still listen to stuff that I should better be listening to Torah, and I should do tshuva for that. But I feel it's important to know what's going on in the world, to have ideas, and I really feel that Glenn Beck is a really great resource. People never even gave him a chance. I think, there's so many people who hate Glenn Beck who never even listen to Glenn Beck. I mean, he has so many good, important things that he brings up, and he's a very, I don't know, I remember I applied for a fellowship, and they asked, and it was a Jewish fellowship, a Frum, Orthodox Jewish fellowship, and they asked me, what are my intellectual, what do I see as intellectual influences, in the secular realm. And then they asked, Gedolei Israel, who I respect, and so I mentioned, I put Glenn Beck, and then I don't remember the rabbi's name, a very famous rabbi in L.A. He had a Skype conversation with me, and he said he was just so amazed that I picked Glenn Beck, of all people, and I was like, well, and he mentioned that one of his main staff people is from, all right, it's neither here nor there, but he was like, I said, I really truly appreciate the scholarship of Glenn Beck, how he puts in things about, how he puts in, sorry, that's my Bluetooth speaker got knocked out by a bump and got back in. I don't know I don't even know which language it is. I don't know if it's Japanese or what, I don't know, but there it goes again. Let me turn this off so we don't have to worry about that. I once tweeted something. I said there's very few things in the secular media that are more satisfying than hearing Glenn Beck talk about how much he hates Woodrow Wilson. And there's, I have a lot what I mean to say by that. But there's a geschmack in it, and so whatever it is, it's so I'd like to be listening to Glenn Beck now. I can't be, but on the way before, I was listening to Stephen Greer. Fascinating individual, this Stephen Greer. Again, with everything, the same thing with Glenn Beck, even with his historical stories that he brings. I know, he uses a bit of theatrics in his history presentations. I take it with a grain of salt, but it's entertaining. It's like what he says, where the fusion of entertainment and enlightenment. I really do feel that that's what's going on in the Glenn Beck show. This morning he was talking about a spoof, a hoax, a parody of a gender studies paper that managed to get into a peer-reviewed journal in gender studies. And at the end he said, and this is what our kids are listening to, this is how the professors get their agenda out there by just confusing them. And he said, and the emperor has no clothes. I'm not really here to regurgitate just what Glenn Beck had to say there. And I don't have anything really to add there. Or maybe I have reception now. Maybe I hear the beeps, and you guys probably hear them louder than I do. But on the other hand, is there value in something like this? I'm going to play devil's advocate here. And of course, I agree with his premise, and in general, in this particular case as well. But on the other hand, what is actually going on here? How do we construct society as we have it today? And where do these muses come from, so to speak, that inspire this? And maybe we could go back to Dr. Greer and his talks about extraterrestrial intelligence and things like that. And how do we balance all of these things? Because ostensibly, Dr. Greer is talking as a scientist, not as a spiritual leader, although he certainly comes from spiritual traditions. From much of his ideology and his teachings come directly out of mystical spiritual teachings. How do we find the balance between those things? I mean, I listened to one clip of Dr. Greer where he said that I forgot about that contest. Alright. There's one thing with Dr. Greer where he said that people were asking about secret societies and things. There's a lot of information on the internet about these things, not just on the internet, but various sources. I mean, there's one particularly, one of these televangelists that's quite an entertaining figure. It's, I remember my wife and I would sometimes watch him. The show would be on late Saturday night. We'd talk about drinking games that we could do. With all due respect, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but Jack Van Impe presents very entertaining, sometimes unintentionally so, but I don't mean to be disrespectful because I have an appreciation for kitsch to a certain extent. I'm a fan of Mystery Science Theater 3000, and I remember hearing that one of the cast of Mystery Science Theater 3000 met a very famous filmmaker, author. I don't remember, and they said, the other one said to them, it's not nice what you're doing, because those people, they had no budgets. They were just trying to, and it's being disrespectful. But on the other hand, and I've spoken to people who are in these movies. I remember one that's extremely well respected, and considered to be groundbreaking and so forth, is Night of the Living Dead. And I spoke to a fellow, he passed away since then, one of the actors from Night of the Living Dead. He played the police chief or something, and he had the hat on, and I asked if he had seen Rifftrax did a riff on Night of the Living Dead, because it's in the public domain. Mostly, not really. I mean, because it is considered to be a groundbreaking, great film. I mean, it's a little bit too scary for my taste. I have a hard time watching it, getting through it, because it's so chilling and so scary, and it's not the type of film that I personally enjoy. I like something more like Robot Monster, something, maybe one of Roger Corman's earlier films, The Creature from the Haunted Sea, something like that, which are low budget films. This was an independent film that was low budget, but I'm just saying it was high art, was Night of the Living Dead, and certainly those films were not, and they weren't intended to be. So I'm going to get back to that in a moment, but I don't remember the fellow's name, and one of the actors from Night of the I remember I heard that when Time Chasers went on Mystery Science Theater 3000, the whole cast and crew, they had a whole big party, and they weren't as happy about it, but and even when Rifftrax did it also, they also were excited about it, and they were honored by, many of the great, Weird Al Yankovic, he has a policy that he never parodies a song without asking permission from the artist. And there was one artist, the artist formerly known as Prince, who eventually was again known as Prince, who refused to give him permission, and they asked him after he passed away, and he said, "No, I'll never do." Even though he said he had written parodies of Prince's songs, he will never release them. He says, I don't know, maybe that could change it, but he says, and he's very respectful about it. But a lot of the artists found it that's the greatest, compliment you could get, is that if Weird Al Yankovic will make a parody of your song, then you really made it. Nirvana, they said that's when they knew they made it. When they asked, when Weird Al approached them and asked them, could I parody you? And they were like, oh, wow, now we really made it, So, I don't think parody and these type of things are disrespectful, that's just why I'm just talking stream of conscious here because I'm just bored. I think by now the radio's back on, but, so I'm just geeking out right now. The thing with what's his name? So that guy, he said from Night of the Living Dead, he was like, this was 40 years of hell, and I was like, now it's 50 years. Really? I mean, I don't think so. Then we asked last year at Monsterbash, 2 of the cast members of Robot Monster were there. And so my wife was, after that, we were scared to ask this question again, but my wife was brave enough to ask the 2 of the cast members from Robot Monster, how did they feel about the Mystery Science Theater 3000 riff of Robot Monster, which was the first season, which is almost, people who are fans of MST, we love the first season because we see the roots where it came from, but essentially, we know they're not as good as the subsequent seasons, and the makers of know it's not as good, and I really wish Rifftrax or the new MST would go back and do Robot Monster again. I know the new MST won't, because all of their films have been color films, so they're not. I don't think they're going to do a black and white film. I mean, I don't know they won't, but I assume they won't. And also, it's not quite the same. Even though I love the new MST, but I like the movies that they have picked, and I really feel that they picked the right films for what they're doing, for what they're working with. But Rifftrax, which is so much more prolific, really, I wish they would do Robot Monster. Again, it wouldn't be quite the same. I really wish that Joel would have done Robot Monster in the 2nd or 3rd season when they really hit their prime. Another film that I really always wish they did was Killers from Space, which the Rifftrax boys did on the film crew, but it wasn't quite as good as the film crew just didn't make it up to what Rifftrax was, which I don't understand. They're the same guys. Maybe they have other writers. Now, I don't know exactly, but there were some of the obvious jokes in Killers from Space. And I love Killers from Space. It's one of my favorite, those type of movies. Just Peter Graves and big lizards and bug-eyed aliens. And people say, oh, it's boring. This and that. I don't know. I just, whatever. My wife was brave enough to ask the 2 members of the Robot Monster cast, what did they feel? And they said, this is what kept their movie alive. They never imagined that anyone would remember this movie, and now, they're still, small time, celebrities, but like everybody in Monsterbash, we were all just so excited to Robot Monster, and again, but they were, they felt honored by it, which I think is a great thing. They said the same thing with Golden Turkey Awards and all these things. It's only 15 minutes. I feel like, sometimes I talk for a half hour and I feel like I only talk for 10 minutes. Now I feel like I talk for an hour. I only talk for 15 minutes. I'm almost at work now, so I could really close up because I'm not really talking about anything. I kind of want to say something about the Parsha, but I don't think it's appropriate for this video, and it was last week's Parsha, and I think I've said it before in other videos. It's really no point in me being repetitive there. And it's last week's Parsha already. I should have made a Parsha video before Shabbos. But whatever, Hashem, they, alright, we'll leave that aside now, but, what else I want to talk about? I was talking about Jack Van Impe, I was talking about Stephen Greer, but again, Jack Van Impe talked a lot about the Bilderbergs, and so Stephen Greer said something fascinating. Again, see this Stephen Greer video. It's this video where they ask about the Illuminati and this and that, and he said, forget it. It's not just these secret societies. It's even groups we know about, the Senate and this and that, the Senate, the Congress, whatever it is. He said basically, within each of these groups, he says there's peerage, where people trust each other. There's a brotherhood, a sisterhood there in these groups. And so let's say you have the Senate, which is 100 people, and one or two of them might be briefed and know the truth about what the claims that he's saying. Again, I'm not saying what he's saying is really true. But it could be, and it makes a certain amount of sense, and even from a religious standpoint, which is interesting. I'll be honest. Listening to Dr. Greer, this is wrong, and maybe this is a shot in his volume, but it's helped my own personal spirituality. Because it's gaining insights, and it's also turned me back to looking into Sifrei Kabbalah and things in a different perspective, different light, even though it's not really different because it's the same things Rabbi Bart Tzadok says on koshertorah.com. I wonder if they're aware of each other, or if they've been in contact with each other, Dr. Greer and Rabbi Bart Tzadok, because it would be interesting to see their perspectives. But on the other hand, it doesn't really matter. I know Rabbi Bart Tzadok would say, well, what is he going to gain from that? What are they going to gain from each other in this? What's really, so, whatever, that being said, we have a lot what to discuss. And it's just how it is. But anyway, all this being said, Rabbi Bart Tzadok, whatever, it's not for us to talk about right now, but so he's pulling someone else over. He's not pulling me over. Okay. I got off my exit. So anyway, I was a little nervous there because I'm just in time for work, and I don't have time to be pulled over, even if I don't get a ticket. So anyway, how do we overcome that feeling, you know? And what spiritual lessons do we have from that, you know, from the fear of being pulled over by a cop, things like that, you know? Anyway, I'm at work now. I don't have really what to talk about it. This has been a pretty nonsensical, geeking video, but he said that within the peerage, there are people who have the information, people who don't have the information, and that's really what's going on here. Is that let's say one person in the Senate knows the information and tells everybody else that it's not true, and they all believe him or her, and that's what really going on here. I mean, all right. So, you know, what do we have to talk about with this peer review hoax? Is there a social construct that that things are created by virtue of these things? Meaning, there are things that, I mean, we have it in Judaism. We have Sfarim that were plain hoaxes, that were parodies, that were made either to produce ridicule, or made to further apostasy and heresy, and people, these hoaxes have come into our holy writ, so to speak, to our into our canon, in a sense. Not that they're not in the biblical canon, I mean, but I mean, you know, the best example I can think of is not the Impe Smecha. The Impe Smecha is not a hoax. It's a different story, and he was suffering, you know, from depression, mental illness, you know. After he was a big Talmid Chacham, and he lost his mind in the war, and so, but he had all that information, you know. But the one that's a hoax is the Kol HaTorah. Kol HaTorah is outright hoax, and yet people believe it, you know. And it's, you know, it. All right. Well, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. God bless. Be well.